So when you're sketching out a painting, sometimes you can over sketch and cause problems for yourself. I think just basic shapes seem to help the most because you're going to cover it all up anyway and lose a lot of it. So just to map out basic shapes and scale, I think helps a lot more than trying to get every single detail. So to keep the sketch simple, I just drew in a horizon line here. Here's the top crest of the wave. You can be creative with this. Here's the left portion of the wave that's crashing over. There's the foam line in the bottom of the left wave. Here's the right part of the wave that's crashing over in the foam. There's a little shaded region in the upper portion. And then just a couple shapes in the sand and foam in the foreground. And then just some unique foam patterns within that open area in the center. And that's pretty much it. And from there we'll start painting. So this is going to be a green aqua type wave with some foam in the foreground, and then a gray foggy sky in the background. And for that fog in the background, I'm going to use a cold gray right here, which is just a black and white gray with a little bit of blue mixed in and a white. And I just want to do something like this, where it's just a light gray. So it's probably a 3/4 cold gray, 1/4 white. And a filbert brush with moist bristles. And then for the base color of the background ocean, I want the junction between the horizon of the ocean and the fog to be blended out well. And I'm going to do a wet on wet. So while that brush we just mixed up is loaded, I'm just going to set that aside. And now I'm going to mix up the background watercolor. And for this, I think I'm going to use a Aegean blue here and a dark aqua viridian color. And we'll start there and see how that looks. So I think that's a little too strong, so maybe a little bit of black. Maybe a little bit of white. I don't want it bright, I want it muted, because it's in fog. Maybe more blue. And some of that cold gray. That might work. That might work. Okay, so now, I'm gonna hold one in my hand here, and then here's that sky color. And we're gonna do both of these quickly and then blend them together well. So here's that foggy sky going in. Keeping everything moist, and I got a little bit more, and I'm just gonna run that sketched out line we have. Blend it out a little bit. And then let's put in this. And really right on that junction, that's what I'm concerned about. at the moment. So this is just another filbert brush, and they're good for blending because they have that rounded point. But right in there, right in that junction between the water and the fog, I'm just gonna run that. You know, I spun the brush like this so it has more of a blade, just so I can run that horizon line and try to blend it out. Because with fog, if fog's on the water, it's not gonna have a clean, defined edge. There's not gonna be a clean horizon line if it's foggy. So I just want to blend that out the best I can. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I just, you just want it to be a smooth transition. And sometimes just doing them both at the same time, like we did there, you can get a nicer wet on wet blend than you normally could. It's tough to get those sometimes with acrylics. This is just a mid-green, a light sap green here. I just added a little bit up in that background color that we mixed up. I just thought it needed a little green since the wave's gonna be green. And we can just trace around our sketch of that basic wave shape. For the top of the wave here, it's curling over, so it's gonna be, as that wave curls over, there's gonna be a section that's gonna be dark. And I'm just gonna use that dark teal viridian green by itself. And just in that sliver there, on the top of the wave, I'm gonna use that. Now, I may put a little bit of that light sap mid-green in there. But I want it to be a darker type aqua green. So using that same color, I'm gonna get a little bit of black, darken it up, and I'm gonna add just some main body to the wave down here where it curls over. Go ahead and put that in. Maybe some here. Just some areas that aren't we're going to have a lot of foam there in the wave. But I also want to add a couple of these dark areas where you can see the water through the foam. And don't make them perfectly defined. Not yet, anyway. I added a little more black there. Here, I'm just going to blend out those edges with a wet, clean brush, just a little bit. So I want everything a little loose. I don't want everything super clean and defined at this point. I'm just mapping out parts of the water that we can see through the foam and the wave to make it more interesting. And then now we can do the curl. For the curl of the wave over here, it's going to be lighter. There's going to be more movement, more transparency. So I'm going to do a yellow-green. I'll probably use this green here we've been using and some yellow. Try to get a light green. Some white. So I think that could work. So down here on the bottom part of the curl, we can block that in. Keep your brush moist, just so it doesn't scrape too much. Maybe down at the bottom, we can add a tiny bit of brown, just to show some of the sand. Now we're moving into the sandy area, and do your brush strokes vertically, just to go with the flow of everything. Here, I'll put some of that brown in. But yeah, try to do more vertical brush strokes if you can. And again, we're just keeping things loose right now, so it doesn't have to be, perfect. Some of this color, we can put some of this over here too, because this area that's breaking over should be similar, not exact, but similar. And then put a little bit of this emerald aqua in. We can use that up here. And this is our first layer, so we can go in and make tweaks, color changes later on, but just to map things out, this will work. So then using that same color, let's put a little bit of variation up in here. Maybe down in here too. So for the foam, let's use that fog that we originally mixed up. And just block in the foam. And then keeping with that cold gray, and the cold gray and white. Let's add a tiny bit of that green we've been using. Just a little bit, and then a tiny green of red. Tiny bit of red. And then a little bit of brown. Maybe a little more brown. Get a little more red. And I want the sand to start showing up in the colors. And then we can block in this other part. Okay, now I want to use more cold gray. Pretty much by itself. And I'm going to put it down here just for shaded foam. Maybe a little touch here. All right, and now that our background is dry, I'm going to do a red and brown and cold gray. Let's put some of that bordering the waves top. And just get your brush moist and blend it out. We can do a dark green, or that green we've been using, and mix that into that red and brown mix. We can add a little wave right here just to break things up. Then we can do that mid-green mixed with our viridian. Put some little waves back here. You can leave some crisp and blend out others. So more cold gray and a bit of white. We can add some little curling waves in there too. And then we can add a pure white on this foremost wave, just right at the top. Tap on some white. to show it curling over a bit. And we can tap a little white here too if we want. Just here and there. And then we can put a little bit of the cold gray in the white. So it's mostly white, but just a touch of that blue and green. And block in this foam area. And add a little bit of green here. This is a brighter green. It's called pale green. And some of that pale green we can put up here. I'm going to get that foam color that we've been using. Block in this part. Go over this again. Go over this again. We run that curl point. That lip. So that cold gray white mix. Be a bit more white. That's our shaded foam again. Just going to block in some of these areas down here. Because it's not going to be bright white. This foam up front, I do want to be pretty much bright white. Maybe a little bit of that brown. Just block it in. And then through the foam in the foreground, let's put a little bit of that red and brown. But mix some white in there, dull it out. And these little gaps in the foam where we can see the sand through, add some of them just to make it more interesting. And you can make these just random, more random the better. I'm just holding the brush and just pinching the bottom of it so the tip, is somewhat loose and doesn't do exactly what I want, and that variation will help and just keep things more natural. You can add some down here just to define the point where the wave's curling over. And then we can get some of that cold gray, mix that in. Whoops. There. Just run some, we need more white. I want it to be white with just a touch of that. But we can blend in just some variation. So the foam's not going to be just pure white. I'm gonna let this under layer dry, and then I'm gonna think things through a little here, and then we'll go back in and do the next layer or two and start to bring it to life. Okay, so I'm going to use a smaller detail brush here, and we can start to put some details in. And I'm going to start up here in this center point. I think this area of foam and water underneath the curl of the wave is going to be key to get right. So following along with the colors that I've already laid down, I'm just going to go back over on a second coat and just continue on that, but clean things up and add more detail. So these areas of foam, I'll add more variation in it. Here's an area of shaded foam that reflects the fact that there's a clean breaking wave right over top. And because of that, it has a clean edge here on the front, so just little things like that. And this is that just cold gray. And here I'm going to use that dark Viridian green mix with a little bit of that mid green. Just add some little dots of that to border this breaking wave, to give us some good contrast against the foam once we define the foam. Add a couple more gaps in the foam. Same color. Just adding random shapes. And reinforcing some of the shapes that we've already created. Just using that same color, I'm just going into some of these areas that need to be darker and just reinforcing them for this second layer. Here we can just add a little bit of white to that mix we've been using and run the top of this curl and blend it in. A bit more white. Just to define it. Blend out that bottom edge. And then get that darker color and put a second layer there. Start to put in a couple little variations. I'm gonna make some of this foam stand out, highlight. Get more bright white. And add some brighter areas to the foam. While we have the bright white out. Let's add a second coat to this area here. We do an emerald and a yellow, I think would look good. We added some of that too. That's a little too dark. Let's add some white. Be a little more aqua. Same thing, we can add a little more white to that and run the top edge. Could add more yellow to that mixture. And some brown. A little bit of that red. Need some white. And I don't want to lose green. But here on the bottom, around the foam, add that color, just to border it a bit. blend them all together. And then we can go pretty much white with a tint of that green brown. We can start to put some of the curl highlights here on top. So just try to go with the flow of the wave. Just tap it on. And you can get a brighter white, pretty much pure bright white. And add a couple selective highlights to that curl. Let's use that light green with a little bit of brown. Some white, needs more white. And put that bright top of the wave back up there. We can get white with the cold gray. Start to put some of these highlights over here too. And just bright white. And if you lose those dark sections within the wave, just go back and get that dark viridian teal that we've been using and go ahead and put them back. I'm just going to fill in the gaps with bright white down here. This is just a touch of cold gray and white. I think we lost some. this is bright white, just to clean up that foam that's in the sun versus that cooler blue foam that's underneath the lip of the wave. And here I'm just going to flick and spray bright white to give realistic foam on some of those areas with a lot of movement. And I have a couple videos showing you exactly how to do that. But this is just bright white being flicked on those main areas of foam and movement, just for a bit of realism. This is bright white. So the foam right at the mouth, right where this curl begins, I want to be bright. But then once it gets up into under the wave, I want it to be that cold gray, blue-white. And that difference between white and the cold gray it's important that there's a sharp difference between that foam color, and that will help your eye to understand that it's being shaded. If not, I don't think the eye will be able to really understand what's going on, because there's a lot going on underneath the lip of that wave. So this is just white, some of this light green, and a little bit of brown. Let's mix up the dark shaded water showing through the wave color. And just, I don't want to lose all that. Let's go back to the shaded foam. And then this, get some of that brown. And up here, up front, and we'll go ahead and put that in like we mean it. Need more white. And just put some of those areas back that we lost. Just put them in, blend them in. Keep them soft. Put a little strip of darker brown on the backside of those transparent holes in the foam where you can see the sand just like that. It'll make it all a little more 3D. I'm going to use that shaded gray. Kind of blend it out a bit here at the bottom. Let's go back in the white. So here you can add a little bit of green to the white and then highlight the flow of the wave just with little streaks that go with the curl. And bright white. I want to add start adding some very bright highlights. I think I need a smaller brush here. I'm going to use a long detail brush. Just to get a little more control. Really put in the other side of this wave, which we have somewhat neglected. But I think as we put this other side of the wave in, especially this crest right here, it'll make this shadowed, shaded foam make more sense. Because we'll really set that lip in, that lip of the wave in. Here I'm just adding some bright points over here too. Not gonna overdo it though. But these highlights can really let you show the curl and motion of the wave. I don't want them too defined though, or I don't think it'll look as natural. I don't necessarily want any of it too defined. It's a little looser type painting. So here I'm just I have bright white on the tip and I'm just touching the tip and then flicking it up. And this should work to create a more realistic type look in the foam. We can add some movement here. I'm going to flick spray one more time and then we'll go in and do some final details and then we should be good to go. I think I'm just going to put in some of that cooler foam color just to add a little breakup and variation down in the foam down there. A couple little things here and there. I'm just tapping it in certain areas just to add some shadows within that foam, make it more 3D. And then I can go back into it with bright white and do the same thing, just dab on some some bright white in between. It'll make that foam more realistic. So this is still the center point, so we want that to be, as good as we can get it. I'm just going to add some bright points in there. This is just bright white. I want it kind of whipping back. Because as it's falling, it would leave little trails of spray. I think I'm going to add a little bit more that yellow, green, and brown. And some white. A little more green. And just some touches of it. It's like a little glaze. Blend it all out. Wash it over. Then we can get back a lot of that white. If we lost any white doing that, go ahead and just put it back. And here I don't want to lose that shaded foam. That we worked so hard to get. Because I think the key of this whole painting is right there. The division between the shaded and the bright foam that shows that lip curling over. I think that needs to be done right or the painting won't work. This is just bright white. I'm just gonna add a little bit of detail to the foam here at the foot of the wave. That little line on the top of the wave to break it up against the background was just a little touch of that emerald green right here mixed into white. So super light aqua. And now I'm going to do the same on this side, but less aqua. And it's just going to be the same thing. I think this will be the last detail I'm going to use, except that I'm going to use that mid green right here and blend that in. Where it's mostly white with just a hint of that green, and just tap it and run that top edge just a little bit. And that I think that one's done. So that's how you can paint a beautiful crashing green wave like this. A little fog off in the distance and the horizon, and those green waves, they have a nice look to them. There's something about them. They're just a little different than the normal blue waves you see all the time. So it's fun to do a green wave like this. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it helped, and good luck on yours. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye.